Now then, the letter K. K, yeah. Do we need it? Why have we got it in the English language? These were the questions me and my mates were pondering over a beer the other night, and to be honest, we struggle to make a case for it, but have it we do. So it's on my list, and I've got 4 or 5 albums that do begin with a letter K to talk about. First one being King Curtis, which I suppose I could have put under C, but it is under K. And King Curtis is he's just an absolutely superb, preeminent saxophone player. He plays any type of saxophone, and he's played with as a session man with some of the best, from Andy Williams through to Buddy Holly. He led Aretha Franklin's backing band. His band, the Kingpins, supported the Beatles at Shea Stadium in '65. And he's produced a number of solo albums, and he's, I say, just a great saxophone player. And he did once say, allegedly, that whilst he loves jazz and R&B and stuff, he also likes to live well, and he likes to make a bob or two. So his solo albums tend to be things that he thinks he can sell, and this one's very much in that vein. That mainly pop and rock covers, everything from Wichita Lineman to Hey Joe to Hey Jude or The Weight by the band, but played very, very well. Yeah, superb saxophone playing, the sort of stuff you'd put on at I think some people call them dinner parties. I don't think we have an equivalent up here in Hartlepool, but if you have some mates round for a bit of a drink and a bit of a nosh, then it's the sort of thing you might put on, you know. And very, very enjoyable, good album. King Curtis, Instant Groove, 1969. Next one up, also from 1969, is Al Kooper. There he is, Statue of Liberty pose. And Al Kooper is the guy who played the famous Hammond organ sound on Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone, which the magazine Rolling Stone called the greatest record of all time. And he muscled in on those sessions. He was there as a session guitarist, but he never got a slot as a guitarist. The Hammond organ was free apparently, and he went in there and improvised a bit of a riff on Like a Rolling Stone. Dylan liked it, he got it up in the mix, and it's become one of the defining sort of sounds of that particular song, and that launched his career. He then went on to form Blood, Sweat and Tears, and this is his first solo album. And I just want to read out, when I was listening to it again this week, I read some of the reviews of this album, and in a range of different reviews, these were some of the words that were used. Pretentious, bombastic, eclectic, ostentatious, extravagant, elaborate, flamboyant, grandiloquent, pompous and grandiose. So I think from those adjectives you can maybe have a guess that this is a bit different, and a bit over the top in parts, but I think it's a really interesting album. I think there's some standout tracks. The title track's great, I Stand Alone. There's a great cover of a Harry Nilsson song, One, and I really like I Can Love a Woman. He uses all sorts of sound effects, sound collages, spoken voice, orchestras, all sorts of things in here. But there is throughout it a bit of a sort of 60s feel as well. But that's an interesting album, something you hear different things every time you go back to it. Definitely worth a listen. Al Kooper, I Stand Alone, 1969. Next one, lovely album, absolutely beautiful. And yeah, great cover, lovely photos as well of Carole King, and this is Rhymes and Reasons from 1972. And if I had Tapestry, which was 2 albums before this, I think, in my vinyl collection, I'd probably be holding that one up, but I haven't. I've got that one on CD, because Tapestry is just one of those remarkable albums, but this is one of 6 or 7 albums that Carole King produced in the 1970s that were all really, really good. And this one's a bit different from Tapestry. It's more melancholic, the songs are sadder, maybe a bit more philosophical, but it really flows as a nice album. I love the opening track, Come Down Easy, and also Peace in the Valley, and the single that was on this album, Been to Canaan. Really highlights Carole King's voice and piano playing, and yeah, just a lovely album. Not as upbeat and as memorable maybe as Tapestry and even one or two of the others, but a subtle, introspective, melancholy album. Yeah, lovely. Carole King, Rhymes and Reasons, 1972. Next one up is also from 1972. This is John Kay, Forgotten Songs and Unsung Heroes. This is John Kay looking cool with his shades on, shades off on the other side. John Kay you will be familiar with as the lead singer with the American band Steppenwolf, obviously famously Born to be Wild in the film Easy Rider. He was born in Germany, end of the war. His family were fleeing the incoming Russians. They ended up in various parts of West Germany. Through I think the American and possibly British troops, he heard some rock and roll stuff, particularly Little Richard. Got into music, and his family eventually immigrated to Canada, where this teacher apparently couldn't pronounce his real name, Joachim Crowderlat, and nicknamed him John Kay, which stuck to this day. The forgotten songs on this album are songs that he'd written but didn't fit with Steppenwolf's style. And whoops, his unsung heroes are people who he really respects, and he covers some of their songs on here. Hank Williams, Hank Snow, Patrick Skye, one or two others. I could listen to his voice all day long. He's just a great singer, is John Kay, and I think this album gives that singing voice a bit more prominence. It's not as big a sound as Steppenwolf were, so it allows his voice to be up front a little more, which I think is a good thing. I think the standout tracks on here, the cover of Hank Williams' You Win Again is absolutely fantastic, one of the best Hank Williams covers I've heard, and also his own track, Somebody. He still plays, John Kay, he still plays occasionally, but he's now into wildlife conservation and environmentalism, and I think puts his energies in those directions. But good album from 1972. And then lastly, this is a band you might not have heard of, the Kersal Flyers. This is The Great Artiste from 1975, and I'm holding this up not because I think it's a great album. I think it's a nice album, it's a listenable album, it's a likeable album. It's got a bit of humour in it, but it's not a classic. But I'm holding it up because it's it's representative of a scene which I really got into in the early mid-70s, the pub rock scene. Bands like Dr. Feelgood, Ducks Deluxe, Kilburn and the High Roads, Eddie and the Hot Rods, Kersal Flyers, and they were a reaction against the sort of, I've used the word pomposity and grandiosity earlier, of some of the big rock bands that had grown up in the late 60s, early 70s, that were playing huge stadiums and spending millions and millions on their albums, and these were all about playing in pubs, mainly in North London, independent record labels, back to basics sort of sound. Most of the bands were sort of blues orientated, although these were more country, rockabilly country orientated. So that whole scene, I think, was just a great scene, and I'd got right into it. I'd started going down to London, was able to see some of these bands, Ducks Deluxe and the like, Yeah, it sort of, I don't know whether it opened the door because for punk, but the scene was blown away a year after this by the punk scene, and some of the people in the bands I've just mentioned sort of drifted into the punk scene. Some of them drifted off and were never heard of much again, like the Kersal Flyers, although for posterity there is a great documentary made by BBC Two, hosted by Melvyn Bragg, on the Kersal Flyers tour up north and Northern England and Scotland, and that was released in '75, so that's definitely worth a look, and that's on YouTube. But Kersal Flyers, the great artiste, 1975. So that's it with the letter K. Next week you might join me when we have a look at the letter L. Cheers.